Hammer, we were talking about your beloved baseball team and how their dopey president just actively sabotages everything they do and makes a jackass out of himself on social media on such a regular occurrence.
Yeah, he's an embarrassment. I mean, just shockingly bad. I just don't get it. Like, I mean, if your intention is to leave, then leave. You
Mhm.
know, if your intention is not to leave, then I mean, like the one thing you can say about the Maloofs is they made their intentions known, and they weren't sneaky. I mean, they were sneaky some of the time, especially the second time around. But like, they still, once they were outed for being sneaky, they accepted ownership of it. They didn't talk to anybody.
Mhm.
They wouldn't like go in front of the press, but at the same time, it was very well known that like, yeah, their intention is to leave, and they were horribly upset with David Stern for holding them back. What's happening with the A's? It really is just shameful. I mean, not only does he go on social media and further embarrass himself.
Yeah.
I don't. That guy should never have a job ever again in professional sports at
Mhm.
all. I would have a tough time with him being near any type of organization that I have because it just you can see right through it.
Mhm.
He's just a fraud. Like, and everything that they're doing feels fraudulent. So yeah, it's pretty tough to watch it play out. And it'll probably it's hurting the brand of baseball so bad. It
Mhm.
is. It's just embarrassing the brand of baseball, the baseball's brand itself. It's killing off an entire fan base intentionally, and yeah, it's horrible to watch. I just, I wouldn't buy a car from that guy,
Yeah.
let alone have him run my baseball team. I mean, it's just like I wouldn't go try to buy something from him on Facebook Marketplace, let alone a car at this point. Like, he's just like he's
Yeah.
such a fraud. It's just
Yeah.
it's horrible.
Well, James, you also brought up something else there when you compared it to the Maloofs and everything. David Stern stepped in and did something. David Stern put his foot down at some point, whether he gave them the autonomy to, you know, talk to cities and things of that nature. There came a point when Stern said, you're not gonna embarrass this city in this league any longer. Whether we're forcing you to sell or hey, get the correct deal to whatever. David Stern was seen; he was there. He's part of the process. Rob Manfred, this guy, this guy is just as culpable, in my opinion, as everything else. We talk about Calvin and Fisher; he's just as culpable. He's letting all this go on in his league.
Yeah, and you know what? He's a coward too. Like, if you look at the things that
Facts.
he's done over the last couple of years, the way that he handled the lockout, even like Chris Bassett going off on him yesterday saying the baseballs are a huge problem. We do
Mm.
not know what baseball will be in our hand from one inning to the next. It is a huge, huge problem, and Major League Baseball doesn't want to listen to it. They don't want to do anything about it. And what they're doing is they're putting their players at risk. He's like, as a member of the Mets, his players are getting hit, and they're getting hit in the head because
Mm.
pitchers are losing control of the ball. So the huge focus has been on to get rid of sticky substances and all that stuff. Well, all of a sudden, you got bad baseballs that are slipping out of guys' hands all over the place, trying to throw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball and control it in an area like this big. And, it slips off your finger just a little bit, and you're hurting somebody. And it's just absolutely, it's horrible. They're allowing baseball to die,
Mm.
and it's on them. They're allowing it to die in Oakland, but overall, they're killing baseball. And to me, it's really sad to watch because it's my first love. I love baseball more than any of the other sports. I still, even though I can't stand what's happened here in Oakland, I still watch these like rambunctious group of crazy dudes that you have no idea who anyone is. I mean, I'm watching every single game. There's some 29-year-old guy looking for his first major league hit, and I'm like, who the heck is this guy? And then the next guy, you're like, I don't know who this guy is. Like, who's playing second base? I don't know. They've had like 14 different second basemen already this season, and we're like 19 games into the season. It's wild.
I can't even trash talk him because I feel so bad.
Yeah.
Typically, if we were in a regularly rival situation. I talk about last night, but I don't even feel good about it because I don't feel I want the A's to stay in Oakland. I hate what's going on.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's it's just bad for the sport. Just like the Maloofs were just horrible, horrible for the NBA. And at the same time, what happened there at the end, where the city came up with the money and they still tried to change the valuation. They still tried to get the team to Seattle. They did everything in their power to force the team. They kept having Hansen raise the price that he was going to pay, and finally, Stern just like cut it off and said, "Look, we're not taking any more bids, and we're also not going to listen to you guys. We want you gone. You're a persona non grata. We do not want you in our league anymore. We don't want you running into a coat closet in a hotel in, what was it, Houston, and hiding from the media in a coat closet in a hotel.
It's just crazy.
Like the George Maloof, I'm a developer crap. Just like so many things were absolutely embarrassing. And they were embarrassing for the entire league. And, go back to once the city came up with the money, if you're a league, you can't go back. Just like what's happening in Oakland. If they get all this public money and it's there and it's passed, like Major League Baseball, they want to go back, man, that's you're committing suicide as a league, because at that point, if a city comes up with the money to pay for a stadium, doesn't matter what sport it is, and you still burn the bridge, yeah, because then what's going to happen the next time? The next time, you're just losing out. You're making an instability that you can't fix.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully, Vivek Ranadive came and saved us, and it is our team forever. As he
Our
told
team.
us. So we have to deal with that. This is our team forever.
It's your team. Yeah, you
And
cannot get rid of it. You can't wash
Nope.
it off you.
Nope. It's here forever because Vivek told us so. And now we're looking for someone to lead this team. And I love that your latest edition of the Kings Beat newsletter is making a case for Kings to hire a first-time head coach. So let's talk there. We've talked a lot about Will Hardy on Monday, so we could put that aside. We talked a lot about Mark Jackson. We'll put that aside as well. I want to talk a little bit about Darvin Ham and Charles Lee, and then we'll talk about some of, we'll talk about Steve Clifford and Mike D'Antoni as well as the show goes along. But since it fits with the Kings Beat newsletter, let's start with these first-time coaches. We got Will Hardy covered, but what about Darvin Ham and Charles Lee? Is there one of those guys that stands out to you more than the other?
Yeah. Realistically, they're sort of yin and yang, right? So if you're looking at who they are as coaches, you have one guy who is almost, for Mike Budenholzer, he's like the enforcer, and then one that is really, really charismatic and really good at pulling people in. And
But I can guess the one. Ham's the enforcer.
of course, yeah. So look, what I call Darvin Ham as a player, because I loved watching him play. So like some people go, "Oh, you didn't watch him play." Yeah, if your last name is Ham and someone comes into the leagues that's name is Ham, you're gonna watch him, you're gonna follow him, you're gonna track him a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And so I loved watching him. He's a human highlight reel. He's a guy who flew all over the court, who gave it 100% every single time he stepped on the court, and just an absolute ball of energy. And he won a championship. He played 8 years in the league, scrambling. I compare him to like Garrett Temple. These are what I like to call in the NBA self-made men, guys who had to fight to get in the league. I mean, Darvin Ham, I think he played in Italy 1 year, right in the middle of his career. He had to leave because he couldn't get a job and came back. And so there's a lot to like about that type of player, because they're not your quote unquote long driveway guys, right? They don't come from the 5-star program. They didn't have it easy, and he fought and he clawed his way into the league. He started out as once he was retired, he went to the D League at the time. He worked his way up as an assistant in the D League and made his way to being a head coach in the D League. and he did good things there. Then he joined Mike Brown's staff in LA with the Lakers. And then he spent the last 9 years with Budenholzer between the two, between Atlanta and Milwaukee. He won a championship as a player with the Pistons and a championship as a head coach. I mean, as an assistant with the Bucks last year. So there's a lot to like about his success and his pedigree, and just like reading the things that you do that you go through when you're trying to research these guys. Some of the things that stood out was that like when there's someone who gets traded to the team and they think it's okay to drink on the team plane, but Mike Budenholzer does not think it's okay to drink on the team plane. Darvin Ham gets up and doesn't have to be asked and goes and takes care of the situation and explains that that's not their culture. When guys are coming back from summer league and they're doing their stuff and you know they usually get to, you know, like a city like Sacramento, first week of September they start playing pickup games. If the pickup games are devolving into street ball and things that you know the team would never have happen on the court in a regular time, he goes and stops it and says, "Look, you're teaching yourself bad habits. Let's start the good habits now, so we have them when training camp opens. We have them game one. Let's do things the Bucks way. Let's do things the right way." And I think the other thing is, like, when you look at this, kind of goes for all three of the inexperienced coaches, is they all come from the same coaching tree. You know, Mike Budenholzer was an assistant with Popovich for 17 years before he got his start. It's the same coaching tree. And when you have guys that, the biggest thing that I think, the word that keeps coming up every single time with this group of coaches is being honest with the players. Honest telling a player he's not good enough, honest telling a player he's not doing enough, honest telling a player he's not working hard enough, honest telling someone that they're not going to play for the next 10 games while they give someone else a chance. And I think at the NBA level, as long as you're honest, even if it's brutally honest, then you have a chance to keep the team together. And I think that's a big deal. And the other thing that, you know, I think we'll talk about a little bit is that, you know, when you are on Popovich's staff and you've got Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker, if you aren't consistent with those guys, you set the table with those guys. So go back and remember, like, 35-year-old Tony Parker getting yelled and screamed at by Greg Popovich. And everyone's thinking, man, he already knows. Like, he's been with you for 15 years or whatever. That doesn't matter. It's about setting a standard that no one is above the law in that. You know, you can talk to guys in different ways and you can have conversations and teach in different ways for different people. But at the end of the day, the accountability factor is equal to for everyone. Everyone has to be accountable. And that doesn't matter if you're De'Aaron Fox or your Buddy Hield or whoever, name that, Chimezi Metu. And so I think that that's a good thing about all of these three young guys. They're all coming from the same exact, like, place where they're learning a way to build a culture the same way.
Now, when you have those two guys and the kind of different ways of going about it, I think they both have benefits. I think I love both styles. Which one do you think would be better for this Sacramento Kings team?
I think
Mercer type guy, or a guy that cultivates relationships and does it the way maybe Charles Lee does?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest question, right? You've got to figure out a way to balance that. And I think it's harder to find a guy who comes in with a personality that is authoritative and truthful and honest and, like, upfront every step of the way than it is to find the charismatic guy. Like, the charismatic guy, you have them in Sacramento. I mean, Doug Christie is a charismatic guy. And so what you have in a lot of these situations is where somebody beats up a player, like whether it's, you know, it's verbally, they take him to task at a film session. Somebody's there to pick up the pieces, right? So you have your guy who is the guy who has the voice in the room, but then somebody else takes that player aside after the meeting and says, okay, look, that was harsh. I understand, but this is how we're going to move forward. And so you need both of these guys. But I think finding that one guy who is a full-fledged leader is more difficult than finding the guy that can win over a room, because again, Rudy Gay can win over a room. Everyone in the room loves Rudy Gay. It's like he was up for teammate of the year, right, this year. Everyone in the room loves him. But finding that guy who's a leader and does everything is different than finding that guy. Yeah. And so that's what separates him. And I think, again, Charles Lee he's the guy who's going to interview really well, right? You hear all of these stories about how charismatic he is, how he connects people so quickly and all that stuff. That in itself is a way that he's going to interview extremely well. And I'm not saying he's a fraud or that it's disingenuous. It's just some people have the gift to that and some people don't. And I think Darvin Ham probably would have had a job already if he would have, if he's better at that part of it, but he's not.
Real quick, Dave. Yeah. James, what was Luke Walton looked at? He was probably looked at as, if Yeager was the bad guy, Luke was probably looked at as the guy that came in and would be everybody's friend. And if that was the case, aren't they up for another bad guy to come in?
Yeah, but you don't have to. Okay, so there's something called a player's coach, and then there's the other guy, right? And you don't have to be the other guy. It's that some of the players' coaches don't have the ability to hold someone accountable. And to be honest with you, sometimes that's a franchise's fault as well. If you don't have the backing of the guys above you to say, hey, look, I've told this guy 6 times to don't get beat on the back cut or to follow through on your route, on the offensive route. I've told him. I need to sit him. And if they're like, no, we got to keep his value up, that undermines the coach in a different way. And so everyone has to be on the same page. They have to be ready for this thing to move forward together. And so I hope they find that piece, that thing that makes it all tie together. And I think some of the time you're gonna say, hey, that's you got a coach who's just easygoing and laid back, and everyone kind of like those things usually don't last forever. You do have to have an authoritarian there in some way.
Is there a hierarchy on Budenholzer's staff right now with these two guys? Because I think that's one of the unique things about them is they're both Milwaukee Bucks assistants.
Yeah, Darvin Ham is I believe the lead assistant, and it wasn't until Taylor Jenkins left a couple of years ago that Charles Lee kind of took a step up into the hierarchy of front of the bench coaches. Darvin Ham is a front of the bench coach, just like Will Hardy is the lead assistant. He was a lead assistant for 2 years with Popovich, and he's been the lead assistant this season with Ime Udoka with the Boston Celtics.
So it wouldn't be terribly outrageous if Darvin, for example, gets the head coaching job that Charles Lee could come with him. Because that's essentially what happened with Ime Udoka and Will Hardy.
Yeah, I could see that happening in certain situations, where you're going to a ready-made playoff team. But if you're Charles Lee, you have a much better opportunity to slide up as Budenholzer's number 1.
Sure.
And just it just pads your resume that much more. Mm-hmm. The associate head coach, that's what Jill says, is Darvin Ham, which is, again, he's a step above an assistant there, and he has been for a while, and he's a really, really highly regarded coach. And that's the other thing I just wrote on this. All 3 of these guys, if you really strip it down and you say, okay, who are 3 of the top young guys that are ready, who aren't head coaches, who are ready to take that step, who are getting interviewed, it's pretty much these 3 guys. We've had a huge amount of coaches jump into the league in this way over the last couple of, the last 2-3 seasons. I think it started with Nick Nurse had instant success and won championship in his first year. Taylor Jenkins has turned around the Memphis Grizzlies, and he's got talent there, but also, what did they go, 19-1 without Ja this season? Mm-hmm. That guy's imprint is all over that team, and he, again, is a Budenholzer guy. But then you have this, there's more coaches. Willie Green's been really successful this year. You have some that have been really, really unsuccessful, but most of those guys are in bad situations. Even like Chauncey Billups in Portland, where they just stripped it down and blew it up. But I think Wes Unseld is the one where you're like, okay, Washington has always had talent. They're just not very good. And then Bradley Beal missed 40 games, so even him, I'll kind of give him a pass. But the guy in OKC, the guy in Orlando, like these aren't jobs that you have a chance to succeed. But the overall thing is that a lot of these younger coaches, Ime Udoka, they're stepping in and they're just rolling. And it's like, okay, the chance of getting a young coach that succeeds and a chance of getting a veteran coach that succeeds, I bet you it's a coin flip at this point because retreads fail all the time. I mean, how much money is New Orleans paying Stan Van Gundy?
Yeah.
I mean, he lasted 1 year, and they're like, oh, nope, that's not going to work, and he's done. So what, he get a 4-year deal where they owe him another 20-something million dollars? Yeah, so I think you can find a good young coach that's ready to go.
So, James, I'll ask you a hypothetical that I asked Damien in the chat yesterday. And forgive me, Utah. I mean no harm when I do this, but I'm going to jump out the window. I'm going to say your season's over. I'm going to say Quinn Snyder gets fired. Perfect world. Both Quinn Snyder's agents and Will Hardy's agents called Monty McNair, was like, yo, we think that we can turn Sacramento around. We're all in. And at the same time, like on a sitcom, they'd be like, we're in. And Monty now has his pick between.
I hate that I can visualize that. It really bothers me that I can see that scene play.
90 sitcoms going on here. Monty now has a decision. He can go with either one, Snyder or Hardy. In your opinion, with James Ham playing general manager, would you go with the proven guy in Snyder, or would you go with the young dude in Hardy?
I mean, I love Quinn Snyder. I'm a Quinn Snyder guy. I have been for a long time. I just think like what's happened here at this point is, they've had a group together for too long. They didn't make changes to the group that they should have, and it's spun itself out. And it just really does they're so predictable in the playoffs. And if you're a player and you know that your team is so predictable, and then the predictable thing happens in the playoffs, then you're like, okay, well, what did we expect? We came back with the exact same team with the exact same rotations. We still don't have a big man that can defend the perimeter at all. We don't have any kind of different look. So I think Quinn Snyder's lost he's lost that team, but I think that team has lost itself. Like a bunch of those guys just want out. Like they're done. I think that
everyone in the exit meeting is going to request a trade.
Yeah, but I mean, look, they were trying to get Harrison Barnes at the deadline. The guy they should have tried to get wasn't Harrison Barnes. It was Rashawn Holmes. Because in the playoffs, you need a big man who can defend the perimeter. And if you had Rashawn Holmes as the backup to Gobert, and you got your rim protector, and you got your guy who can work on all these switches, then you're going to be okay. But the fact that they brought in Hassan Whiteside, who, can't bend his knees, he can't defend the perimeter at all. Rudy Gobert can't defend the perimeter. It's just a mess.
They need guards that can guard the perimeter.
But they have those. I mean, at some point you have to have your big man has to be part of that. Yeah. And so, they do have some guys there that, O'Neal can defend, and even, Donovan Mitchell came into the league as a defensive stopper. That's what he was. He tried to convince us that he was a point guard coming into the draft. And everyone's like, just say you're a basketball player. And then secondly, he was the best defensive player, the best defensive perimeter player in that draft, or one of, I think that draft is OG Anunoby as well, right? So we knew OG would be good as well, but he was probably not going to go till later because he had torn his ACL. But either way, Donovan Mitchell hasn't stayed in front of his guy at all, and none of their guys have been able to stay in front of their people. It looks like a bad scheme at this point more than anything else. And sure, Quinn Snyder needs to be responsible for some of that, but sometimes you get to a point where if your front office, you ask for a point guard and your front office goes out and signs Royce White, like, what are you supposed to do? Mm-hmm. Like, And that's what, they have a problem. They have a roster problem there.
Quinn Snyder's Hollywood Hogan beard always gets me when he just has that. I forgot to shave look. Like it really is just extraordinary. Like when you pull up pictures to put on like our different videos on YouTube, and you pull up a good Quinn Snyder picture, it's like, oh yeah, Quinn Snyder looks like, yeah, I love Quinn Snyder too. Let's come back. We'll talk. We've talked Darvin Ham. We've talked Charles Lee. We've talked Will Hardy. There's a couple of names we haven't really dove into much, particularly Steve Clifford. I'm anxious to get your thoughts on Steve Clifford as well as Mike D'Antoni. We'll talk more about the Sacramento Kings and their coaching search with our 1320 Kings insider and creator of the Kings Beat, James Ham, here when D'Lo and Casey return on Sacramento's #1 sports station, ESPN 1320. Quinn Snyder looks like the coked out brother on every like Succession, like on every like TV show with the rich family. He's the coked out brother.
He's so intense in person too. He really is super, super intense. It's no nonsense. He runs himself into the ground. I think he would be better served taking a year off as opposed to jumping. Yeah, I think he really is going to be. He's going to come out of this pretty beat up. Yeah. But I think he's an exceptional coach. It's just whether he can. I think he would probably work. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. And someone else brought up the Joe Ingles thing. The Joe Ingles impact is pretty huge. So losing him when they did was bad because even he's just so smart, and he gives you something that they don't have right now.
Let me try this real quick. Quinn Snyder got those crazy eyes, huh?
Crazy eyes, huh? You're looking over there and you're looking over here, huh?
Yeah, he's intense.
That might be your best,
yeah.
man. That might be your best.
That's funny.
The Macho Man is my Doc Rivers,
man. The cadence.
Everybody can do a Macho Man impression. Did you watch wrestling growing up?
Yes, I did when I was young, but then I stopped.
Then you grew up. Yeah,
yeah,
we haven't quite gotten there.
Plus, I grew up in the sticks, and the reason I bring that up is I also grew up in a time before like DirecTV. So like I grew up without cable television.
You had to watch Channel 31.
Yeah, exactly. So I had Channel 3, I had Channel 6, I had Channel 10, Channel 13, Channel 19, the Univision, and then Channel 31, and sometimes 36, and sometimes 40. But 36, you had to turn the knob, and that's where the A's games were.
Man. Imagine not having Fox 40, and being able to watch Sean Cunningham now.
No, we had Fox 40. We had Fox 40.
I'm old enough to remember when Channel 31 would go off the air for the night.
Yeah, national anthem would play, which is something I never like. Why are we saluting America at 1:30 in the morning? I don't understand.
We had an antenna like 100 feet up in a pine tree. My dad put his witch's spurs on and climbed all the way to the top, and
that is the most James Ham thing you've ever said right there. My dad put on his what?
Witch's spurs. Like I
love that you said that as if I'm supposed to know what that is.
I have no idea what that is. On the back of boots?
Yeah, the spur that not so instead of so they go on like spurs, right? But I believe they have a bottom plate and then a spike that comes out the bottom, and so you climb a tree, you put a rope around a tree with on a belt, and you move the belt up, and then you stab into the tree as you go up.
No, you don't.
No, I don't either.
No, you don't.
No. I did not play kick the can. I played a ton of wiffle ball, though. Ton of wiffle ball. And I can still rake in wiffle ball. And I got some crazy pitches. That's funny. Yeah, I grew up, I didn't have, during my formative age, no MTV. So there was no MTV where I lived. So
we didn't have cable Sorry, I try not to do that. We didn't have cable when I was younger, but my grandparents did, and they lived next door. So whenever they were gone, that's when I would go watch MTV
When I went to my aunt and uncle's
or
house,
BET.
I would go watch ESPN, and then like late at night, ESPN would like play rugby and a bunch of weird stuff.
Yeah.
That's what, yeah. But I was
coming back,
enamored
guys.
with it.
Come for the Kings talk. Stay for James Ham's dad climbing a tree
With wicker spurs.
with wicker
Witches,
spurs.
witches first. Yeah.
He basically has spurs with spikes on them. What James is saying, his dad is the Iron Sheik. Those are the types of boots that he wears to climb the tree. That's all the fun that you get over there on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live as well. But if you're on the Odyssey app in 1320 AM, we appreciate you no matter where you are. Thank you for making us a part of your days. We're here with the creator of the King's Beat, gearing up for another happy hour with Fox 40's Sean Cunningham. Coming up tomorrow, you want to be a part of that? Got to be a premium member over there at the King's Beat. Head over to thekingsbeat.com. Newest newsletter went out, making the case for the Kings hiring a first-time head coach, and I think you've done that brilliantly. I really like the idea of Will Hardy, and you really got me excited about Darvin Ham and Charles Lee as well. But there are other candidates involved. We've talked extensively about Mark Jackson. We've talked a little bit about Mike Brown as well. One guy that I don't think we've talked a ton about is Steve Clifford. Steve Clifford, who I think was working as a counsel or something with Brooklyn. Steve Clifford, hard-nosed guy. Like we joked about, De'Aaron Fox wants structure. Boy, do I got the guy for you. That may be what I know about Steve Clifford right there.
Yeah, and Steve Clifford hasn't had a huge amount of success in the league, but that doesn't mean that he isn't a good coach. He seems to have taken over jobs that weren't great, that didn't have the talent necessary at the time. What he's been a head coach in Orlando and Charlotte. He's hard to get a read on because, he isn't one that has he is part of some of the coaching trees and stuff like that. But, especially he worked a lot under the Van Gundys, both Van Gundys. So defensively, he's going to be really strong, and he has his opinions on how he wants to run defenses and stuff like that. I'll also say this, like in my research, he shares an agent with a couple of these guys. So he does have the same agent as Will Hardy and Darvin Ham and Monty McNair. And so,
holy crap!
Wow.
Yeah. So,
but that's where the next head coach is going to come from.
Well, you have to remember that
got strong Clutch Sports vibes right here.
Yeah. Well, you have to remember that in the league there are only a handful of coaching/executive agents, right? And so they do have a lot. But the good part about that is that if you get the right agent and you find the right coach, that agent usually helps you fill out that staff. And they will they will work with some of their other clients to help you build a really strong staff because it's in their best interest for you to succeed. Mm-hmm. And so that's a lot of ways that you get a really exceptional staff is that you're dealing with a coach with an agent that has a Rolodex of really good, guys and who has an understanding. Because if you have one head coach and he has, say, 6 members on his staff, and 2 of those members are under you, but 4 of them either don't have agents or they're under somebody else, you still have exposure to how good those guys are. So you can call, say, again, Michael Malone, who's also, is under the same agent, and say, hey, look, do you have anybody in mind you think it would be exceptional to take over as a lead bench, front of the bench, like lead assistant? And it's like, yeah, I've got this. Well, what about a defensive guy that you're maybe isn't on your staff, but you've worked with in the past? So you have all these ties, and that's why I think it is good to have all of this stuff. Like, it's always more complicated, right, than you think. And so I think it's good that there are some ties here. But Clifford is kind of a guy that, was forgotten about for a little while. And, I remember he used to have Patrick Ewing on his staff, right? And so like he's coached good players. He's been around good coaches. He does have a very strong personality and a very strong defensive mindset. I think in a perfect world, Steve Clifford might also be a really, really good number one assistant. And that's something that he's not at this point. So anyway, yeah, I think he's at least intriguing, but I would prefer a little bit younger and a little bit more successful if you're the Kings.
Well, that's, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, like with all the connections, all the dots that have been connected, how realistic do you think it is where, let's just say Will Hardy gets the head coaching job, and because they have those same type of contacts, Steve Clifford comes in as, his lead assistant, the Alvin Gentry, so to speak, on his staff?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because if you are bringing in a young first-time head coach, you do want to have like a veteran hand next to him. And that coach, again, I think the cool thing about
Alvin, it's going to be Alvin.
But he is. He's
working on something with Alvin in the organization.
The front office position will be announced.
We haven't heard about that in a little while.
Hey, just say it after the initial firing and then just never bring it up again.
I'm thinking about what James said when he's like, yeah, we heard that about
Ty.
About Ty, and then he just never heard anything again.
Come on now.
The Kings are like, let's break up but be friends.
Yeah. I think that, again, to the point, though, if you have a young coach that you're bringing in, right, a guy who I don't want to say inexperienced. I think that's the best part about like the group of younger coaches, that they're the inexperienced guys, the guys who haven't had a first-time job. The cool thing about all of them is, again, Darvin Ham, 11 years an assistant, like 34-year-old Will Hardy he's 12 years in the league. And so like these guys are all experienced coaches, and they've had, time to learn from other people, and there might be someone else that they really like that they want to bring in to be their number one and really get them going off on the right foot. And the other thing is that most coaches, like almost 100% of the time, a head coach has the ability to hire his own staff. And there might be one or two coaches that are like, hey, this guy we have here in Sacramento, we want him to be on your staff. Is that okay with you during the process? But it's like, yeah, that's fine, but I get to hire the other 5 guys or 4 guys or whatever it is. And that's usually the way it goes. These guys get to hire their own staff.
Do you know if Joe Dumars is a part of this process at all?
He's there. I know that. So I'm going to say yes. And I also will tell you that Joe Dumars was the executive in Detroit when Darvin Ham won an NBA championship. So yeah, like but that's the league, right? Like the 6 degrees of Greg Popovich is sort of the way I look at it at this point. Like every single one of these guys have some sort of connection to a connection to a connection. And a lot of these guys have connections to to Wes Wilcox. Very few of them have connections outside of D'Antoni to Monty McNair. And so again, that's another guy that, like, if we look at D'Antoni, like what he does is so different than anyone else that, you almost can't teach. He's just so good at offensively. And, again, if that's where you're going, you're just like, forget the defensive side of the ball. We're bad at defense anyways. Let's just go full-fledged offense. At least he brings something to the table that's different than any head coach that's ever coached in the league.
I'm just glad Damian stayed around this time when D'Antoni was mentioned.
Well, no, no, yeah. I'm just Mike D'Antoni's just the one that I just don't get.
It's funny. Almost every single person has one person on this list that they're like, oh no,
And
like,
And I'm the only one where it's not Mark Jackson.
yeah, it's
That's my guy.
For Hammer, it's Mark Jackson. For me, it's Mike D'Antoni. And this is not a knock on Mike D'Antoni at all. It just doesn't seem like the right play.
Right.
And Mike has been a great coach. He's been tremendous in the NBA. And I don't want this he's 70 years old, man. He's 70 years old with this Kings job. It's like, even if things, go well, like, is he, Pop is 76. Like, are we starting the, Mike D'Antoni retirement watch in 3 years? Like, I don't know that. I don't know.
I think
Mike
Pop
just
is
doesn't feel
73.
like
Am I wrong?
73?
73. Yeah, Pop is 73.
I don't know where I got 76 from.
Yeah.
I made it up. That's what I did. I just
I mean, like, look, that has to be your concern, right? If you shuffle through coaches all the time, what you're looking for is like, you're not looking for a 3-year deal here. You're looking for a guy. I mean, you might sign a coach to a 3-year deal with a 4th-year team option, but what you're really looking for here is like an 8-year guy, a 10-year guy, someone that can be with you forever. I mean, that's every time you hire a coach, it should be with the thought that he could become Eric Spoelstra and be here forever. That he could be the Rick Adelman that gets you 8 years. That should be your hire every single time. It's not, let's bring in 3 guys to, pay them 1-year contracts to try to get us over the hump and into the playoffs, and then they'll be free agents next year. And it's not, let's bring in a 1-year or 2-year and done head coach. You need a structure here. You need a foundation that you can build around forever. And I just, the dream is to find the next Popovich. That should be the dream. Go find me the next Popovich, a guy who, gets here and goes, oh my gosh, this is a perfect place to raise a family. I love it here. And like puts down roots. And
in that sense, Mike D'Antoni would be 95 at the end of that run.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Inpatient KC is here. Last week we were told first round interviews was probably going to start this week. I'm checking my watch. I'm tapping it like Stone Cold. It's Wednesday. Have you heard anything?
I did reach out today and I got, they have no new update. So as of right now,
all that means is we ain't telling him nothing.
Yeah. We ain't found. Yeah. Yeah.
Your brother's here, James. That's what we could tell you. Your brother's here for his interview. Your brother Darvin is here for his interview.
Yeah, I don't. I think we're gonna get one of those interesting, like 2 or 3 tweets here that says, like, Coach X has been told he's no longer part of the Sacramento Kings coaching search. That's what I think we're gonna get. I would like to make sure of this. I would like to make sure that of the 7 coaches, that all 7 would take the job if they were offered the job. Because you're interviewing does not mean that you're going to be willing to take this job. So I kind of want to know that too. I think, again, the 3 guys that don't have head coaching experience, those 3 guys I think are more likely to take a job. Although, again, if you think that Will Hardy isn't going to have like frontline head coaching options next year, you're absolutely crazy.
So my thinking in that was, in patient Kenny Caraway over there, like leading into that Friday news that we got with that list coming out, they were spending time like, hey, we'd like to, Darvin Ham and Charles Lee, for example, we'd like to talk to these guys about being, our next head coach. Would they be interested in that? Would they be interested in like if the job was presented? My feeling was they were gauging the interest of all of these candidates so they could say publicly, this is the list of people that we're going to interview for this job. What gave me pause was, particularly for the younger guys, more so than Mike D'Antoni, Steve Clifford, and even Mike Brown, was Will Hardy, Charles Darvin. They're sending a note to Charlotte and Los Angeles and Utah, whoever else may be considering firing their coach or who already has. Hey, Heads up, we're going to interview in Sacramento.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this.
Because the Kings being used as leverage would stun absolutely no one.
That would be very Kingsy.
Yes.
Yeah, from what I know, very much the 7 guys, they're all interviewing. That wasn't like,
Right.
this is a list that we're going to put out there.
Right.
And I think the Kings learned from that list, that mantra a little while ago when they did the GM search, and they put out a list, and then like 4 of the guys are like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to interview for that job.
But to Damien's point, though, they probably already got confirmation. Well, tell me if I'm wrong, Damien, but they got confirmation from all of these guys that they
that's
the job before
right.
they even put it out there that they're interviewing.
No, I don't think so.
Really?
If a coach is going to be willing to take the job, that's going to be a different conversation, because a coach could say that up front. Yeah, I'm willing to take the job, and then they get in the interview process and they're like, okay, this is all a bunch of hooey. Like, I'm not doing any of this, and I'm out of here. So, like, the interview process is not. I mean, it's more complicated. It's not just the Kings looking for a new head coach. It's a head coach looking for a frontline job, and there's only 30 of them, and everyone understands that. At the same time, you don't take the wrong job if you're in the NBA, and everyone keeps thinking that they can fix the Sacramento Kings, and they've tried just about everything, especially in my 12 years covering the team. The only coach that they went to that was not a retread, the only one was Michael Malone. And like, everyone else had head coaching job before.
Mm-hmm.
None of them worked out. The only one that really you can say may have been much better than they thought was Michael Malone, and they didn't show the patience. He's the guy with a plus 500 record since that time. I don't think any of these other guys have a plus 500 record. Most of them haven't coached again. Keith Smart, and of course, Paul Westphal is no longer with us, but George Karl's not getting another job, and Ty Corbin is not getting another job, and so
Luke ain't getting another job either.
Yeah, well, I mean, Luke will get another job as an assistant, and then he'll have a couple of years to rebuild, and maybe there's a possibility that he jumps back in the game.
College.
Maybe college, but also I wouldn't put it past for him to get another head coaching job. Just like I think Dave Yeager will eventually get another head coaching job, and
Dave Yeager was really successful before he got here. Like, he was like a 50-win coach in Memphis.
He's in 16 years since the Adelman retirement. Well, Adelman left. He's the only coach to win 39 games in Sacramento. If you don't call that really successful for Sacramento standards, that should tell everybody like how successful he is. So yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be some really complicated questions about who really wants his job and who's just interviewing to get their name out there again and stuff like that. And you find that out pretty quickly during the interview process if you ask the right questions, and you don't blatantly say, are you just doing this to get your name out there? But if someone is truly interested, they'll tell you by how ready they are for the interview. So if they start telling you how they're going to put De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, but also give you a list of 6 players that they think would really fit well with those guys, and how they could see, Davion and Dante DiVincenzo. If they start digging into your roster and telling, that means that they took the time to do the research and make sure that they're ready. They're not talking about guys in cursory fashion. They're actually ready to pitch you an idea of how they would turn this thing around.
Yeah.
How much do you think, I asked Kenny this earlier this week, and I'm curious to get your thoughts. How much do you think this interview process is the candidates selling themselves to the Kings and the Kings having to sell themselves to the candidates?
I think it depends on the candidate. So I will, like, D'Antoni, Clifford, Mark Jackson, they better be selling themselves to the Kings.
Yeah.
The young guys, they need to sell themselves to the Kings because they need to show that they have the ability to capture the imagination and pull a room, right? I'd say the one guy that doesn't have to sell himself at all is probably Mike Brown. And that's because he's like, look, I'm going to get another job. It's just a matter of which one and when I decide to take it. Because, I mean, again, he's a coach with a strong track record. He's had some misses, but a strong track record. Who just spent 6 years with one of the best franchises in the game, and so like he's rebuilt anything that he took a step back on. And I think with him very specifically, it's going to be, is that the right job for me? Is this the right job? Is going to
Well,
Utah?
that's what I mean. How much do the Kings have to sell? Like, hey, we know our reputation, especially when you're talking about guys who, I mean, guys that are at Golden State, guys that are at Milwaukee, guys that are at Boston, guys that just left San Antonio. Hey, we know our reputation. We know how bad it's been. How much does Monty or Vivek or Joe or whoever is a part of this process have to kind of ease their, what I'm sure they'll have, concerns over this franchise's history?
Well, I'm sure that that's going to be part of every discussion. But again, I go back to the coaches that are on that list. Some of those guys are not going to get another coaching job ever. Like we talk about D'Antoni, we talk about Mark Jackson, all this news that Mark Jackson is, like he's being mentioned everywhere all of a sudden. And like a lot of people think like, I don't think I buy it, because I think that Mark Jackson is still the same guy who left the coaching world like 9 years ago and hasn't done anything to show me that he's going to be a better coach than he was then. And that's a concern, where I know that these other guys, they're still doing things. I mean, D'Antoni was on a bench like a year ago. He was a lead assistant, if I'm not mistaken, with
Brooklyn.
Yeah, with Steve Nash in Brooklyn. He's the one who ushered in Nash's first year. So, again, he was willing to take that role. So I think some of these guys are like, really, they would like one last shot. Like Alvin Gentry wanted one last shot. So I think that there's that. And then, again, I think that the younger guys, there might be some salesmanship that you have to sell them a little bit, and you have to sell them on, the 2-star young players that you have and the cap space and the first round draft picks and all that stuff. And that your owner spent $130 million last year. And so, you're in it and they're spending money and they're trying to improve the team and they're trying to turn this thing around, and the goal is what it is. But I think with younger coaches, like we're not hearing these guys' name mentioned on all of these jobs already, because a lot of these are veteran teams that are looking for just a different voice, as opposed to a team that is looking for an entire structure to be put in place and built. And that's what I think the biggest problem the Kings have. They need they need someone who can build a foundation and then start framing up walls and doing things the right way.
And we all know how James Ham feels about the right wall, if you caught Monday's show. That is our 1320 Kings insider, James Ham, and creator of the Kings Beat. Go become a premium subscriber over at the Kings Beat so you can join the happy hour tomorrow with James and Fox 40's Sean Cunningham. Can't wait for all the tea to be spilt on the happy hour tomorrow with James and Sean. Again, you can become a premium subscriber by going to thekingsbeat.com. Check out the Kings Beat podcast wherever you find podcasts.